everyone, and welcome to the 7th episode of the European Dialogue for Sustainable Cities. I am Saara Vauraman, hosting you today with Jussi Knuuttila. In this dialogue series, we want to highlight solutions that other cities could use in their daily development. We also want to invite always one previous European green capital to the show. Today we are talking about air quality, and our guest city is Oslo, the European green capital from 2019.
And welcome everyone on my behalf as well. My name is Jussi Knuuttila and I'm your second host for today. And viewers, you can participate in the discussion by asking a question in the chat on YouTube. So please do that while we are here discussing with the panelists. And we can start. So viewers, you can tell us where you are joining from. That would be very interesting to know where we have viewers today. So
Great.
Write your answer in the chat.
Good to hear where people are joining today. At least this is a very, very global issue that we are talking about. So hopefully we'll have an audience from all over the Europe. Our first guest comes from the city of Oslo, Tobias Wolf. Tobias works as the chief engineer at the Agency for Urban Environment, Oslo Municipality. He has extensive research project background with environmental monitoring and sensoring systems. He holds also a PhD in meteorology. In his free time, he enjoys several outdoor activities such as paddling, running and canoe polo. So welcome to the show, Tobias. Great that you could come.
Thank you.
And the second guest is Hannamari Jaakola. Hannamari works as a global market manager for urban weather and environment solutions at company Vaisala. Vaisala is a global leader in weather, environmental and industrial measurements, providing observations for weather and environmental monitoring in various fields, such as meteorology, air quality, transportation, renewable energy, and also industrial customers. And in her current role, she is extensively working with cities to develop new innovations, how to best monitor our environment and create means to protect it. So, welcome to the show, Hannamari.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Glad to have you.
The next guest is Patricia Lucas from ICLEI Europe. She works as the Sustainable Resources, Climate and Resilience Officer. ICLEI is a network of cities with 2,500 local and regional governments around the globe committed to sustainable urban development. At present, Patricia is a core team member of the consortium delivering the European Commission's Green City Accord, and we are going to talk about this a lot more today. Before joining ICLEI, Patricia conducted research on sharing economy, and she has also worked for the European Commission. So great that you could enter today, Patricia.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
And our final guest today is David Smith. David is the founder of Little Ninja UK, a campaign that is focused on reducing children's air pollution exposure. David's campaign aims to reduce the harmful and unnecessary burning of fuel to protect public and planet health. In June 2020, David documented the journey of closing the road outside his son's primary school during drop-off and pick-up to create Wandsworth's in London First School Street, which has inspired others to take similar action as well. David is active in the fight for environmental and social justice as well. Welcome to the show, David.
Super nice guests we are having today.
Yes.
We haven't got that many answers from our audience yet, but if you want to comment still where you are joining from, or otherwise if you have something to ask while we are talking, there's definitely room for you to join this. And I think at least we got some audience from Finland joining us, which is super good. Our topic today is air quality. during the last decade, air quality has considerably improved in Europe. Nevertheless, air pollution is called a silent killer for a reason. Air pollutants still cause over 400,000 premature deaths in EU every year. Do you know how many people have died in COVID in Europe so far?
I would say maybe a bit less than...
I think it's more, but you know, this is roughly in the same figures anyway, so we are talking about serious problem. It also causes diseases, for example, strokes and asthma. Of course, the EU aims to improve air quality by reducing air pollution through different means. In addition, the target is to make Europe a climate neutral continent by 2050, I think the first in the world. It includes, of course, a few cutting emissions and a target for zero pollution in the air. But let's start maybe with a little bit personal viewpoints to this problem, which is huge. We would like to hear about the panelists' experiences in their own hometowns about air pollutions. Is the air quality problem in your own hometown? And in case you have a picture in mind, there's a possibility for you now to present it, but just telling a story, that's also completely okay. And I think we could start, of course, with Oslo, with Tobias. So would you like to share a picture or story?
Yes, I can share a picture and a story, both simultaneously. The story is about, this is where I go running, when I go running. So it's pretty close to my house in Oslo. And it gives me a nice view over the city. And what you can see is that the city center, that's the part nearest by the fjord. And that is actually emerged in this kind of haziness, while everywhere else it's quite nice. It's a sunny day, it's beautiful. And also here there's a little bit less haze, and it's a plateau that's a little higher up than large parts of the city. And you can see that it's also quite cold from being ice here on the ground. And that's the typical case when we get air quality problems, not where I took the picture from. There the air quality most likely was perfectly fine, but further down in the city, because Oslo is located in this kind of depression here, where air pollution can accumulate over time, and therefore worsen the emissions that we have in the city. While right now, actually, you can imagine the same without the ice, everything a little bit more greener, and without the haze, because in summertime, mostly the convection, due to solar heating of the ground, removes most of the air pollution. So right now, actually, life is good.
This picture taken in early spring.
No, it's actually taken late autumn.
Yeah, because these kind of occasions also happen here in Lahti, most often very early spring. So thanks a lot.
We have them a lot in the winter, so they last throughout the entire winter season, and that's also for us the season where we expect air pollution to become worse. So if we had severe air pollution in the summer, it might have been some specific high emission reason, but mostly we are more alert, much more alert during the winter, because then this can be a much more normal situation.
Thanks a lot, Tobias. Maybe going then to Hannamari. Would you like to share a picture or a story?
Yes, I will also share both, so just a moment. Yes, so this is my hometown called Järvenpää, which is a small city quite close to Helsinki, around 40 kilometers. And it's a typical city close to capital, so most of the people are driving every day to the work in the capital area in Helsinki or Espoo or Vantaa, in those surrounding regions. And we have around 45,000 inhabitants, so there is quite much traffic and population around, but luckily we do have a railway along the city and the railway station here in the middle of the city, so part of this traffic is managed anyhow by the trains. And we also have a nice lake called Tuusulajärvi and some countryside here around, so it's a very nice city altogether. And concerning air quality, it's probably quite good, but like what is the situation with these smaller cities, it's not really monitored. So there are no regular air quality monitoring in this city, so we don't really know that exactly, but I would believe that it's good generally. Of course, traffic exists, some industries, and I guess the wood burning and wood combustion during the winter time because of this fireplaces is a kind of issue. So there are lots of small housing and most of them have the fireplaces. And if you go outside in the evening, you can sometimes even smell the smoke, unfortunately, during a cold winter evening. So that may be an issue concerning the air quality.
Let's talk about this wood burning issue later on. I think that's also a common problem in many cities.
Right.
Okay. So thanks a lot for sharing, Hannamari, this picture. Patricia, would you like to tell a short story of our picture?
Both, actually. Let me try to do this. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. This is a park in Berlin where I live. I live quite centrally in Berlin, and we have two big parks here in the area where I can walk within 10-15 minutes to, which is obviously wonderful. This picture was taken on 1st of March, so it was a crisp, very early spring or late winter morning. And this picture shows you just how I imagine living in Berlin. It's nice, it's crisp, it's quite sunny. And there isn't much air pollution going on now. I checked, actually, the situation this morning. We had no episodes recorded in Berlin. Berlin has a very nice network of measuring stations. And it didn't flag anything to me today, nor yesterday when I checked. But that's, of course, not the case in all cities, certainly not in Germany. I spoke with a colleague of mine today who is in our ICLEI office in Freiburg, and she didn't find it that easy to find this kind of information. But most certainly, it's not a major concern for me living here centrally in Berlin, at least not at the moment.
Great. And there are, of course, huge parks also in Berlin, so that helps.
Yeah, a lot of green space.
Yeah. So David, would you like to tell us a story or maybe share a picture?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when we think of London and we look at these pictures we've just seen, it's beautiful. And you look at these, and I think that's the kind of real hidden part of air pollution is that you don't see it. So for many years, myself and my children would be struggling in London, waiting at a local bus stop and not really aware that the large diesel vehicles idling right next to us, next to our children, the stuff coming out of the exhaust pipe is invisible, but it's actually carcinogenic, group 1, like tobacco smoke. It increases the risk of cancer. It stunts children's lungs. And it took years for me to realize just one day when my son was like, wow, look at this articulated lorry. And I thought his face is, literally, a meter away from this exhaust pipe. What is that stuff I can just barely see coming out, this kind of haze? And I went home and investigated, and that's where the whole idea of Little Ninja UK came from, because suddenly I realized that our children are kind of fighting this battle against these kind of pollutant monsters, invisible and yet deadly. And by measuring that and trying to use diffusion tubes and eventually going to university, and they suggested an AQ mesh monitor, and actually finding out that actually at the time we were at the bus stop, which is, morning peak time when children are on the school run, levels can be almost 2x, 3 times sometimes the legal limit. And that children are actually exposed to 5 times more pollution during that school run than at any other time of the day. Main roads are so much worse than back streets, but our main roads are our community roads there, where our hospitals are, our GPs, so many of our schools and nurseries and our shops, our supermarket, our hospitals, our care homes. So it's almost the time we spend, traveling to and from places, we're actually spending it in the most polluted places. And that's
horrible.
Really quite shocking, yeah. So, I think that's the bit, when you look at these pictures around a beautiful city like London and around the world, we have to realize there is this kind of invisible killer. And how we tackle that is, not just about air pollution, but also around climate change, because it's the NO2 and also the CO2, these kind of exhaust emissions from these cars.
Yeah, they come hand in hand, these things. Thanks a lot. We'll come back to this question definitely later on.
And the battle against invisible monsters, or
Yeah.
what was the word?
Yeah.
Very good.
Also, our viewers, if you happen to have a story in your mind to tell about your own city, what kind of problems you've had with air quality, or has there been, a specific case that you would like to share, you are free to tell us. Please do it.
All right, and continuing forward, Sara, traffic is one of the major air pollution sources, one of them. Tobias, it is said that Oslo is the electric vehicle capital of the world, with 30% of all vehicles sold in the city in 2015 and 2016 being electric. The city has also invested in sustainable transport modes and introduced car-free zones. So how are these measures affecting the air quality in Oslo?
Well, overall, quite positively. About one thing, these car-free zones, these are in planning. There is a small action right in the most dense part of the city center, but that's more for making the city actually more usable by the inhabitants than about air pollution. But the real big car-free areas, they are under planning within. There's 3 rings in Oslo, city rings going through the city, and they're successively planned to be within Ring 1 and Ring 2 at least. But those didn't have the biggest effect. The really big effect that we have seen is, and also that is quite visible for the population, is the decline in NO2 emissions. And that's due to this transfer from diesel-based or mostly diesel-based vehicles to then very much electric-based vehicles. And I think the sales numbers are quite a bit higher for electric vehicles even now than they were. I think they're around 50% or maybe even higher.
Yeah.
So that means we're actually gradually exchanging the car fleet towards electric vehicles. And this had a tremendous effect, reducing NO2 pollution, because electric vehicles don't have NO2 emissions, obviously. But simultaneously, that didn't do... so I can show... I can briefly show a quick drawing about this. If I'm allowed to share my screen again. Is that okay?
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Yes, okay. So we can here see the long-term trends. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. We can see here the long-term trends from our annual report for last year we are currently writing. For SO2, that obviously has declined tremendously. And also for NO2. We don't see it here very closely, but we can see it more here about the days with the highest pollution with NO2 by hour in one of the measurement stations that has been active quite long in the city. And you see it's going down quite a bit, but simultaneously you can also see it has quite a bit up and down. So we were also very lucky with the weather recently, the recent years, because NO2 mostly gets a real big problem during so-called inversion episodes, where we have the situation that the air is mostly locked in within the city and doesn't get exchanged. And therefore NO2 accumulates over time. And this is still possible that we get high NO2 air pollution in Oslo even today with all the electric vehicles, because we still have a significant amount of diesel-based vehicles driving around in the city with engines that are still quite strongly emitting the nitrogen dioxide. But if we look at the other compounds, however, if we look at particulate matter, that's a different picture, because, for example, for PM10 here, which is coarse particulate matter, the development has been a decline in the early 2000s. And that's because Oslo has introduced a lot of measures to reduce the PM10 resuspension, to try to actually remove it, reducing the amount of studded tires and tremendous amount of cleaning and binding dust so that this doesn't get resuspended from the road. And that decline you can see here, but in the recent years, it has been almost completely flat, just year-to-year variation. And that's because the emissions haven't really gone down. Electric vehicles emit just as much as any other vehicle, PM10, by road, tire, and brake wear. And if they wear starter tires, they're even worse because they're really, really heavy. And I mean, if we're talking about electric vehicles, we very often, pretty much always talking about middle three-figure horsepower numbers. That, of course, is much more prone to producing or grinding down the road than what a much smaller car would do. So this is an issue that we're having quite strongly. And for PM 2.5, I don't have a good drawing here though, but for PM 2.5, it also has been mostly flat, the development. And that's because the main emitter, which is wood burning, has decreased somewhat, but not as tremendously as it has for NO2. So yes, the measures we have taken, they had quite a strong effect, but the effect was very strong on NO2 and much less on the other two well-known and well-considered pollutants, both particulate matter, fine and coarse grain. And that might be worse without the measures, because we also have this toll road system in the city, which is specifically to reduce emissions or reduce pollution. And we also have streets where you can only drive slower in order to decrease resuspension, the main rings actually. It's a traffic speed, it's an environmental speed limit. But there we still have a way to go, and we are struggling with this every single year, especially during winter time.
Thank you, Tobias. I can see that you have many measures at place, and also the trends are going downwards. Something that I would like to ask you is, what do the citizens of Oslo think about air quality and air pollution? Is this something that people are talking about? Is this considered as a serious environmental or health issue? A quick answer.
Well, like in every other city, that's highly mixed. We get questions from the public about when our stations are down, because they open their windows, especially if they're living close to major streets, according to the air pollution. So they try to open their windows to ventilate their homes when the air pollution is good. And they avoid it when it's worse. And when one station goes down due to technical reasons, they actually contact us and ask. And people are discussing this quite a bit, quite heavily, the air pollution, also especially in terms of children. But of course, there's also other people that are really, really fed up with the measures that we're doing, because they are making things inconvenient in some sense. I myself, I'm biking to work, so I don't feel that problem. But people that are really dependent on cars, of course, they are not really happy. Frequently, they're not really happy about the toll road. Some are, because they feel the improvement in air quality. So it's a wide variety of opinions that we also get as a feedback, both extremely positive and also really extremely negative.
What about sharing this information? Have you found good ways how to give this data to the citizens?
Well, I mean, we are sharing this information. We have the air quality data in all of Norway are very publicly available, and that's done through the state. That's really good, and the system is being updated as we speak right now. So it's there's a lot of work done with it, and I think Oslo or Norway overall is quite successful with this, and there's a lot of monitoring stations in Oslo. And we also have another project where we work with microsensors in order to even be possibly able to increase awareness even more. So we're doing what we can, but obviously communication is never perfect. We're trying to work with it however we can, and we are trying to also meet those people that are really negative about it, and try to actually explain them in a nice and friendly tone what the problem is and why we're doing the things we are doing. So we sometimes get quite negative feedback, and then we try to talk to them also a lot. But as I said, communication is never perfect, and I would never claim that we have the best communication. I think we're doing it quite okay, but I am pretty sure there's other people doing it much better than us.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, let's go back to the monitoring and censoring, and maybe also this wood burning issues later on, because this is common here as well. But I see that we've got some comments from our audience, some questions, and then a story as well. Maybe I'll start with a story actually from Finland and Järvenpää and Lahti. This is from Milla Bruno. I lived in Järvenpää between 1999 and 2002. The city has grown rapidly during the past 10 years. Has this rapid growth challenged the city development in regards to traffic and its effect on air quality? So maybe this is also one of the questions that cities are a lot of tackling with, how to find a good ways for urban sprawl and then for this air quality censoring and issues. So would you like to comment straight to this one? Of course, not knowing about the city of Järvenpää, but maybe about Oslo's growth. What comes to your mind?
Unfortunately, I haven't traveled so much in Finland. I've only been to Helsinki, which I like a lot.
We'll understand it fully. Yeah. But please come here to Lahti still yes, this year.
I'll try. But yes, in Oslo, there has been a lot of these measures are actually that we're doing against air pollution are to reduce or at least keep steady the amount of private traffic within the city. Because the population has grown all the time. Oslo has been, for a few years back, it has been one of the fastest growing capital in Europe, I think even. That led to more and more traffic and bigger problems, both in terms of that there was more or less a traffic jam all the time, and also in terms of increasing emissions. And a lot of these measures we're doing are exactly against that. So we managed to keep the traffic increase somewhat flat. Some areas reduce it, some areas it has risen. But that's one of the major things we're thinking about while talking about future air quality is also the increase in traffic, because that obviously, if we don't reduce the emissions per traffic unit, for example, car, then we get more pollution over time, and that's something we really don't want. We want to reduce it.
Complicated question, really.
I guess Lahti is also doing a great job on this. Not sure.
Yeah, well, we'll go to the measuring actually. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Tobias, and I think we could now take a short video insert telling about Vaisala and measuring. What do you think?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Hannamari, Vaisala and the city of Lahti are currently testing new air quality sensors in Lahti city centre. Could you tell us what is so special about these sensors and how can they help in improving air quality here in Lahti?
Yes, it has been a great cooperation project with the city of Lahti indeed, and I think the main special thing with these compact sensors, which already was referred by Tobias also, is that they are very compact indeed and very easy to install, and they also measure all these critical parameters in the same time. So in Lahti we have now installed 2 of these new Vaisala AQT 530 sensors which monitor 4 gases, so nitrogen dioxide, nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide and ozone, and then particulates PM2.5 and PM10, so exactly the most critical parameters. And when considering now Lahti, so we knew that you didn't really have these regulatory reference stations located in the city center. So now it was very helpful that we found 2 new locations in the Market Square and in Aleksanterin Katu, where we were now able to receive new air quality information on those specific slots where exactly people are moving and spending their time and really exposed to poor air quality possibly.
True, and also because we are having a big transformation going on in the city center, so we aim to cut a lot of car passing traffic within the center. So having this sort of before-after data would be also valuable, I think, for the urban planning. They are indeed very compact, but if going a little bit deeper into the monitoring and measuring world, what are the biggest challenges in the air quality monitoring? Could you tell us about it?
Yes, I could say that considering the current commonly used technology, so these are these large reference stations like containers, which are typically placed quite sparsely in the city. So the challenge exactly is that they are first of all quite expensive, and they are quite difficult to be placed to those exact locations where people are exposed to poor air. So that's perhaps the biggest challenge. So the networks can't simply be made dense enough to detect the local variation in the air quality. But luckily, these new technologies like compact air quality sensors and microsensors and the modeling capabilities really help, because you can supplement these regulatory measurements with these new technologies and really catch these critical areas and really understand the air quality in a detailed manner. And of course, that gives you then tools to really create new means to improve the air quality. So that's of course the ultimate goal with all of these measurements.
Do you see, Hannamari, that these sort of smaller and medium-sized cities could be, using these kind of technologies to have a little bit more information about this issue?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned, in fact, this Järvenpää, which was just also a question. So it's my hometown, and I know that there are no air quality monitoring at all. And this is because of the current legislation. So typically, it's only required that air quality is monitored in the larger cities. So indeed, we have quite many small cities in Europe where air quality is not monitored at all. So we don't really know how the air quality is over there. So definitely, I think it would be very valuable also to have these new technologies, which are quite economical also, to be placed in these smaller towns and cities.
We've got also one question from the audience about background, about the question itself. What are the biggest air pollution sources? Is road traffic always the worst polluter? So do you have this kind of data about Europe, for instance? Which are the main pollution sources?
I think it varies very much, and there might be better experts to reply on that in this group.
Question for all of the panelists, so you can each also comment on that one to have just good information to our audience. Thanks a lot.
I see that Tobias has hand raised.
Okay, I think we could give now a comment to Tobias and then later on to David about this question about biggest air pollution sources. So, Tobias.
Yes, actually, that's what I was talking about, that the state is updating these air quality services and doing a really good job there. And one of this is that they giving, that's a Norwegian, it's called kildebidrag, which means source contribution. There you can see where the pollution is coming from. There is some drawbacks in it, but for PM10 you can see that quite a lot is background, and that's year round. And then there's some sea salt, and then there's the problem of the dust and wood burning. However, that's year round. If we're talking about only the winter, then we get quite a bit different situation, because then the background is less dominant. So the reason why this looks like this is because we have the most pollution during the winter time, and then also most exceedances of air quality limits during the winter time. If we look at NO2, we can see that exhaust is by far the biggest contributor, and then there is some background, transportation from Europe. And for PM2.5, we see that a tremendous amount of background is arriving us, and that's also something we're struggling with. It's really difficult to improve PM2.5 because, of course, there is a lot of wood firing emissions. And even in winter time, the background is still quite large. So coming under the new legal limits in Norway is quite difficult, because the background already takes a bit part of this. So we are both influenced by our local emissions quite strongly, but simultaneously we're also suffering from everybody else. So we all have to work together.
Definitely good point.
it's the same like with CO2. If Norway cuts all emissions, that's important because Norway is a contributor, but it's a tiny country. Then we have cut emissions in Norway. That doesn't help for the climate.
Yep.
So we all have to work together. But the point is, we can't really say, oh yeah, we are so small, so we don't do anything, because then we everybody's doing it, and then we are at the same
Doing
place
anything.
as we have been.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
Good
important
answer.
that we all do and work together. And I'm pretty sure that for Europe, there's areas where the background is even more important.
Oh yeah.
Influenced by each other.
Good comment, definitely. David, would you like to?
Tobias has really answered the question very well. If I kind of like take it into a kind of micro and look at, say, London and surrounding areas, we're certainly with PM10, PM2.5, particularly in the winter, it is wood burning hugely. We found in the UK over the last 5-10 years, having a wood fire seems to be one of these, again, people kind of aspiring to have this wood burning inside of a city, which is kind of crazy. And so you get this smell of smoke, wood smoke, as you're going down the road and stuff. And yes, it's very wintry, very Christmassy, very festive, but also you kind of realize that actually it's poisonous. It's so deadly. But then we also have started to move on, not just from kind of air pollution, but air pollution exposure, and actually recognizing, particularly in the cities, it's around the kind of proximity to traffic. So, as much as we have lots of PM2.5 from the wood burning, we get lots from the exhaust pipes, and we've got lots from the diesel vehicles. But I think we're actually realizing that now we've got more and more diesel delivery vans. So I'm not sure what it's like in other cities, but we're finding there's a lot more ordering from home, a lot of it because of the pandemic. We're getting a lot of deliveries from diesel vans, sometimes very old diesel vans. So again, much higher in terms of the kind of NO2 that they're actually giving out. So when we look at people's exposure, then it actually is, again, about proximity to main roads and obviously the children on these main roads. And so therefore, quite a big exposure for PM2.5 and NO2.
David. And yes, sticking around with David, you started monitoring air quality in the streets of London because you saw that the air quality information provided by the authorities was not accurate enough. We have now been discussing monitoring, and according to your monitoring results, air pollution levels were harmful or even illegally high at some places. So now that you saw the short video insert and also heard the Hannamari's response, what do you think about the air quality monitoring in Lahti?
It's interesting because, yes, we're absolutely right. We have these kind of fixed, expensive reference stations dotted around, and they do paint a picture, but I think it's important to realize that they are just in this particular area. If you go 20 meters, 50 meters, that's not telling you what the air pollution is like. So absolutely right, what we heard earlier, which is, we need to supplement these with these kind of, and quite advanced now, smaller monitoring units, co-locate them, make sure that they're the information coming from is credible, and then place them in different areas. And that actually gives us a much better picture, which is what I did with ours. I think from there, you start seeing quite shocking that actually, areas that you wouldn't have necessarily considered, actually, because you've got lots of vehicles idling or just kind of pockets of time where pollution is high, and air pollution levels can really shoot up in those areas. So it's really important to have that kind of more of a kind of micro kind of management. In London, we've got London Air. They do a good job in terms of these reference stations. The Mayor for London has got about 100 of these AQ mesh monitors, like the one I purchased, and those are dotted around for a kind of Breathe London campaign, again, giving this extra insight. But what we really need to understand, I think, and to share today, is that the really simple one is where you have congested traffic, and Tobias mentioned this as well just a little bit, where you have this kind of start-stop idling of vehicles, and you understand that every acceleration is like 10 times the emissions. Every time they're braking, there's this brake wear, road surface wear, tire wear, the little microscopic plastic, metal, oil, rubber that gets into the lungs, gets into the bloodstream, goes everywhere blood goes. This is the stuff. An idling vehicle produces like 150 balloonfuls worth of, toxic air every minute. So you imagine a balloon, 150, you know, and then you think about, right, it's 5, it's 10, it's 15, it's 20 minutes that they're idling per mile, you know, and they're stopping and starting 20, 30, 40 times just to drive a mile. And that, for me, is a real key area, because if you see that, you need to understand that air pollution is high. It's dangerously high. And we can all be able to recognize that and see that without necessarily having an air pollution monitor. The air pollution monitor will confirm what we think, but when you have a choice of walking on a quiet side road, or you're going to spend time on a busy main road and it's got congested traffic, you automatically should be thinking that's actually going to have very high levels of air pollution.
We rarely think it, really.
Yeah, and idling vehicles is something that you don't really think too much when you are walking down the street. And isn't this exactly how this Little Ninja project started? I read from your webpage that children are exposed to 5 times more air pollution during the school run, with the highest exposure for those who live, walk, or wait for buses and attend nursery school on main roads. So what do you think authorities should do in cities to improve the air quality and to protect people's health? What should we do with the idling cars and ingested traffic?
Well, we started off what we call the No to Idling campaign, which was actually asking the government to kind of tighten up the laws around idling. You know, they talk about it in the UK and they say, you know, we shouldn't idle our vehicles and we'll give you a fine, but it doesn't have any teeth. So, you know, the one is to actually partly education, but partly kind of through managing, you know, the legal framework to say, actually, when you stop, particularly if you're parked outside a school, a hospital, a nursery, you know, public places, you have to switch your engine off. You know, if you turn it off after 7 seconds, then you're saving fuel as if you kept it running. So even though engine restart is around 7 seconds worth of idling. So if you are going to be stationary for more than 10 seconds for any reason, when you're parked, switch your engine off. In terms of impact outside schools, well, we've started just simply closing the roads out of schools during drop-off and pick-up. So actually, you know, there's a school, this is a road, we're going to close the road, barrier here, find another route for this hour in the morning and this hour in the afternoon. And actually drivers are like, oh, I can't go down there, why not? Oh, I can see a group of children, okay, it makes sense. So this kind of education process through kind of a little bit of enforcement makes a massive difference. I think that the care we need to take with this is not to kind of use the exposure of air pollution for our citizens and our children as a reason to push through schemes which might not balance out in terms of the kind of social justice aspect. So we've got an interesting one at the moment called low traffic neighborhoods. A great idea to kind of close roads 24/7 to try and kind of reduce emissions on those roads and displace traffic. But the problem is it kind of builds congestion on the roads that you know push traffic to. The idea is that over time traffic will go down because people change their behaviors, more people will cycle and walk and use public transport. But unfortunately, we kind of brought it in during a respiratory pandemic when people aren't getting on buses and not getting on public transport. So we end up with a huge amount of increase of congestion on our main roads. And it may not be the same in all cities, but in London, these main roads are residential roads. You know, it's very rare to find a main road that doesn't have, you know, schools and hospitals and lots of homes on. So, you know, the kind of idea that we've had of low traffic neighbours is a great one, but actually when you implement it, you've got to be careful that what you're not just doing is simply displacing traffic from areas of high car ownership and pushing it into areas of low car ownership and where people are already most at risk. And, you know, just the last thing to really mention around that is when we talk around air pollution, we talk about climate change, we have to also talk about climate justice, environmental justice, social justice. And what we do find, certainly in London, is that our most polluted areas, it is where the poor live, it is where the Black, Asian, minority ethnics are more likely to live, more likely to walk, more likely to use public transport. So if you're waiting for a bus by the roadside, it's also, we have a lot of schools and on main roads, and 80% of those schools are what we call deprived schools. So again, it's the poor, Black, Asian, minority ethnic. So when we come up with these great schemes, we've got to take that next level and actually look at the kind of equality impact assessment, look at the real thorough consultation and look to say, yes, we like this idea, we can see the vision 5-10 years down the line, but what does that mean on a day-to-day basis for the people who may already be most at risk and the voices we don't necessarily hear. So I think that's a really important part to add in there: climate change, climate action, climate justice.
Thank you, David.
Indeed. Thanks a lot. Patricia, ICLEI promotes the Green City Accord as a Europe-wide movement for a healthier and cleaner environment. By joining the Accord, mayors agree to step up their efforts in 5 key areas by 2030, which are air, water, nature and biodiversity, circular economy and waste, and then noise. So how many signatories there are currently, and what are the main benefits for signing this Green City Accord?
Yes, indeed, we are helping. I should probably point out that we are not alone as ICLEI in implementing this initiative. We are working alongside the great Eurocities and CMR. And at the moment, we have over 60 signatories. This number has been increasing every week. They come from 15 different countries, of course, including Lahti and Oslo. The most recent signatory is Munich, which is the first German signatory. We're very, very happy to have them on board as well. And we can see that this initiative is gaining traction now. And why that is, what's the benefit of joining the Green City Accord? Well, I think cities see it as a great point to accelerate action on all the 5 areas, obviously including air quality. They gain visibility and recognition for their actions. A lot of our signatories, they've for a long time have been involved in improving their environments, but now this is also seen, and that is both on the European level, on the national level, but also by their citizens. Having said that, they also contribute to shaping EU environmental policies. So our signatories have a platform. They can voice what they need and how they can achieve better results in implementing their actions. And of course, they are part of a like-minded community of cities that are committed to taking actions. This community provides them with access to information, and that is among peers, but also on the Commission's level. And they participate in networking and capacity building, benchmarking, developing projects together, and also receiving tailored guidance from the Secretariat to help them implement the actions that they set for themselves.
So I guess there are now cities in all over Europe joining.
Yes.
So I find that as an interesting and important part of the Green City Accord as well, because easily we change the information with sort of nearby cities, or like in Nordic countries we are used to have a cooperation, but it would bring a lot of new value to have new partners also in maybe sharing the similar kind of challenges. Like maybe our point could be sharing the ideas with other medium-sized cities in Europe, so we could find maybe partners through the Green City Accord. How cities in practice may be learning from the activities of others? How are you, in practice working with the network?
I should have said the Green City Accord was only launched in October 2020, so it's a very fresh initiative. Having said that, we already have over 60 signatories, and we are trying to now see what it is that is needed on the city level to increase collaboration as well. And at the moment, we are in the process of organizing peer learning visits for our cities. There was a call. We asked cities who might be interested in acting as hosts and guide other cities through the particular challenges or through the solutions that they found to their challenges. And there is going to be a peer learning visit with a specific focus on air quality. It is going to be hosted by the city of Valencia, and it's going to take place in October. So this is a very much hands-on activity. Other cities will be able to join this visit. Of course, due to the pandemic conditions, this will only be able to happen online, but it will be a 3-day exchange intensive exchange facilitated by us as well, trying to learn from your peers. There was a great interest in this, and we are very proud of it. And of course, this will be the first of our 4 peer learning visits that are scheduled for October. And we're very much looking forward to working with Valencia and the peers.
Happen to have an interested cities there in the audience. Where can they find more information about Green City Accord? They
can contact us at contact@greencityaccord.eu or go to the website or write to me, and I will be very happy to provide you with more information.
Okay. Thanks a lot for sharing this, Patricia.
And I saw that Tobias, you had your hand raised during David's speech. Did you have something to comment on David's idling cars or car-free zones or?
No, there was mentioning this with the very localized pollution, because I was working as a researcher with very fine-scale dispersion of air pollutants, and then you suddenly see something interesting happening, how actually people are affecting each other and their neighbors. So if you look at this, you can also see that under a lot of circumstances, people hurt themselves quite a bit. Unnecessarily, for example, with wood-based heating, the dispersion doesn't just go away. So under some circumstances, neighbors just send the emissions to each other. And that's also what people should remember, that we're affecting ourselves and our own children. And a funny anecdote about the idling that came up when you were talking was, because you're thinking about idling at a school. I don't know how much you have been in Scandinavia, but there has been this terrible habit. I think it has been in Finland as well. If it's minus 15 or something below, my car won't start anymore, which might have been true, I don't know, in the 50s, 40s. I've never seen a car that doesn't start at those temperatures.
Never happened to me.
Unless it's broken. And so I've seen people actually literally having their car standing in a parking lot and just having a second key, locking them and leaving, and the car is running, or not even locking them. And that obviously has been a lot better over the recent years, thanks to all the car thefts around there that make this decision worse and worse. But there has been this habit, and I've always thought it's just plain terrible.
Definitely. I mean, if there are these very cold days, you sometimes see this kind of habit still. That's very true.
Yeah, but as I said, I mean, at least I've never experienced a car not starting due to cold unless something was really broken. And I think the choice having it run forever is really, questionable.
That's a good reminder for all the car users to be really thinking about this more. David, would you like to comment?
Yeah, just thank you very much, Tobias, for mentioning that, because even this idea that we have to warm up the engine before we drive, the easiest way to warm up an engine is to drive. The actual damage you cause to an engine by idling, and engines are designed to be driving at, performing at 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. This is when they're burning fuel efficiently. When you're actually idling and traveling around at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 miles an hour, you're actually, it's incomplete combustion, and the very expensive components in your engine are starting to be damaged by this fuel which isn't burning properly. So, the idea of you're doing a good thing for your car by idling, it's not. The other side of as well, which I didn't mention, and again, Tobias for reminding me, is, if you're sitting inside of a car, there's plenty of evidence now to say actually, you're breathing in, the fumes are coming in from underneath your car. If you're in traffic behind an idling vehicle, the fumes are coming in. If you've got your fan on, you're sucking in directly the exhaust fumes from the vehicle in front. So, they've shown at times, it can be, up to 9 times higher inside a car than outside a car, because you're actually sucking this dirty air in. So lots of people, I've seen it myself, they've got children in the backs of cars and they're parked and they're idling. And I've knocked on the window and said, you've got your vehicle engine rank, yep. You're conscious around the fumes going into the car. Oh, well, my daughter, my son, they're sleeping in the back and they like the vibrations. And, there's this idea, or I'm charging my mobile phone, so there's all these reasons why people idle. And yet if you're inside a car, you're at risk. So it's interesting how responsible people are for their own health as well, because it's not just to the benefit of everyone else who's outside the vehicle. It's also to an origin of it'll benefit you as well.
This problem is in such a smaller scale that we actually really realize. We measure it only in a sort of a very big picture. We should understand our personal behavior much more. But let's move on, I think.
Yes, we have one last funny,
Excellent.
very fun final round. So we have around 4 minutes time. So please, very brief answers. So the last round is about myths, statements and misconceptions also that relate to air quality. And the first one goes to Hannamari. Air quality is good enough when you don't see or smell the pollutants. Give us 1 or 2 sentence reasoning to this claim.
Yes, that's a myth. So unfortunately, it's not true. So like we have discussed now here many times, so it's a silent and invisible killer, can't help it. So even these low concentrations can be harmful to us. So not true, this one.
Thanks a lot. Tobias, technological development like e-cars will solve the air pollution problem.
Well, as I said, for NO2, electric cars in Oslo have helped tremendously, but we don't only have NO2, and only the technological development doesn't really help. I mean, we have electric cars, and Norway has a lot, and I think UK has a whole, and Germany has a whole lot less. So the technology in itself has to be applied properly, and this has to be helped quite a bit. But I'm technologically positive, so what I would say is that over time technology has to help us, because with the current technology we can't come any further than we are. So we have to have new technologies, but we have to help first of all the development and also help implementing it on a wide scale.
Thank you, Tobias. And then Patricia, air pollution is a problem only in high-density urban environments.
No, that's certainly a myth, and there are so many factors that factor into this. Depends on geographical location, on activities that take place in this area, on emission sources. To give an example, airports, they are not usually situated in high density areas, but are where high pollution can be measured. So the only way to really know where there is an air pollution problem is to measure. So we cannot assume that only high density urban environments are where the problem is. Certainly not.
Thank you.
David, only long-term exposure to high levels of air pollutants is harmful to health.
Definitely not true. Engine, we know if we're near one because you can actually hear the change in breathing, and we've got lots of children who get rushed to hospital purely because we've had a high pollution day, and it's just that hour or even 15 minutes of near high pollution that can really turn a day from a nice beautiful restful day to suddenly a bit of an emergency and getting down to the hospital.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Thanks a lot. A lot of discussion about air quality and measures and problems, and I learned so much. This was the 7th episode of the European Dialogue for Sustainable Cities. What did you learn?
I learned many things. I need to pay attention to the idling cars. I learned so much about Green City Accord, how the air quality is measured. Very informative, very good hour. And the theme of the next episode is energy. And stay tuned for what's to come on September the 1st. So in 1 month, we will be back in the studio.
And Bristol as our guest.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much, our great panelists, and also our viewers for joining us today. Join us also the next time. See you then. This is the European Dialogue for Sustainable Cities. Moikka!
Moi moi!